"What do you mean you sold the apartment? I already promised it to my wife. Give me the money from the sale now." Nathan screamed those words at me with a fury I had never seen in his eyes. Jessica was crying behind him, clutching her chest like she was having a heart attack. But I just took a deep breath and said calmly, "There is a second piece of news you need to hear." When the words left my mouth, I saw my son's face change. First confusion, then fear, then that trembling in his hands that only appears when someone feels the ground opening up beneath their feet. "But Mom," he started to say, his voice breaking, "my wife and I can't be homeless." And right there in that exact moment I knew I had won. Because for years I was the one who trembled. I was the one who begged. I was the one who lived in fear. But that woman doesn't exist anymore. My name is Elsa. I'm 65 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was invisible. Invisible to my son. Invisible to my daughter-in-law. Invisible even to myself. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment that my husband and I bought 30 years ago. It wasn't luxurious. The walls had damp stains in the corners. The kitchen was small and dark. But it was mine. It was the only place in the world where I still existed as more than just a shadow. My husband died 7 years ago. He passed in his sleep. No pain, no goodbyes. And from that day on, my life became a silent routine. I'd get up at 6 a.m., make coffee in the same old pot that made that weird noise, sweep the floor, look out the window. Wait. Wait for what I didn't even know myself. Nathan was my only son, my only close relative. After his father died, I thought we would get closer. I thought he would visit more often, that he'd call to see how I was, that maybe, just maybe, he'd invite me to dinner once in a while. But no, Nathan had his life. He had Jessica. He had his job, his friends, his plans, and I was just an item on his to-do list. A quick call every 2 weeks, a mandatory visit at Christmas, nothing more. At first I tried not to feel bad. I told myself it was normal, that children grow up and leave, that I couldn't be selfish. But loneliness is heavy. It weighs on your chest like a stone, sinking you slowly. So slowly you don't even realize it until you can't breathe. Nathan's visits were always the same. He'd ring the bell, walk in without smiling. He'd sit on the couch with his phone in his hand. "Hey, Mom, how are you?" "Fine, son. And you?" "Fine. Busy." And then silence. That awkward silence filled with the sound of notifications from his phone. I'd offer him coffee. He'd say he didn't have time. I'd ask about Jessica. He'd answer in one-word syllables. I'd try to tell him something about my day, my neighbors, anything, and he would check his watch. He always checked his watch, as if every minute with me was a minute stolen from his real life. But I smiled. I always smiled. Because he was my son, and a mother doesn't give up. A mother keeps trying, even if it hurts, even if she's invisible. Jessica was different, or at least she seemed to be at first. When Nathan brought her home for the first time, she smiled a lot. She hugged me. She called me Mom in a sweet voice. She brought me cheap flowers from the market. And I, so lonely, so hungry for affection, I let myself be fooled. I thought I would finally have someone else in my life, a daughter I never had, someone to talk to. But the flowers wilted, and with them Jessica's mask fell too. Slowly I started to notice the glances, those quick looks she'd cast around the apartment when she thought I wasn't watching, glances that evaluated, that calculated, that measured the value of everything, the walls, the furniture, the space. And then I understood. To her I wasn't a person. I was an obstacle between her and what she wanted. The humiliations started subtly, so subtle that at first I thought I was imagining them. One day Jessica came over with Nathan and said, "Mom, this couch is so old you should replace it." I told her I didn't have money for that. She smiled and said, "Well, when this apartment is ours, the first thing we'll do is renovate everything." When it's ours. As if they had already decided, as if my death was just a pending formality. Another time. They were having dinner at my house. I had cooked for hours. I had made the roast that Nathan used to love as a child. But Jessica barely took a bite and said, "It's a little salty, isn't it, Nate?" And my son, my own son, just nodded without even looking at me. They left their plates almost full, and I, as always, said nothing. I just cleaned up in silence while they talked about their plans, their dreams, their future, a future where I didn't exist. But there was one moment that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the bathroom when I heard Nathan and Jessica arrive. They hadn't told me they were coming. I heard their voices in the living room, and something in their tone made me stay still. It made me listen. "How much do you think this place is worth?" Jessica asked. "I don't know, maybe $150,000, Nathan replied. "With that, we could make a down payment on a real house. A big house." Jessica's voice filled with excitement. "But your mom isn't going to sell, right?" Nathan laughed. A dry laugh. "No, but she's not going to live forever, and when that happens, this place is mine. It's all the inheritance I have." Jessica sighed in relief. "Good, because honestly, I don't know how much longer I can pretend to like her." I felt something break inside me, something that could never be repaired. I stayed in the bathroom, my hand over my mouth so I wouldn't make a sound. The tears fell on their own, but they weren't tears of sadness. It was something deeper. It was the death of an illusion, the illusion that my son loved me, that I mattered to him even just a little. When I finally came out, they were sitting on the couch. Jessica smiled at me. "Mom, what a surprise we didn't know you were home." A lie. They knew perfectly well. They just didn't care. Nathan didn't even look at me. He was checking his phone, and I once again smiled. I offered them coffee. They said no. They stayed for 10 more minutes and left. And I sat on that old couch they despised so much and asked myself, when did I become this someone waiting for her own death just to stop being a bother? The hours passed slowly after they left. I just stared at the ceiling, listening to the city noises, cars passing, distant voices, the wind hitting the window. And somewhere between the darkness and the silence, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to wait anymore. I wasn't going to be invisible anymore. I wasn't going to give my life away to someone who was only waiting for my death. For the first time in 7 years, I felt something like anger. But it wasn't an explosive anger. It was cold, calculated. It was the anger of someone finally waking up. The next morning, I woke up different. I don't know how to explain it. It was like something inside me had hardened during the night. Like all those tears I shed had washed away something old and rotten, leaving room for something new, something stronger. I got up, made my coffee. But this time I didn't sit and look out the window like always. This time I took out an old notebook I had saved in a drawer, and I started to write. I wrote down everything I remembered. Every humiliation, every hurtful word, every look of contempt. I needed to see it. I needed to understand how blind I had been. And when I finished, I had filled 5 pages. 5 pages of proof that I hadn't imagined it, that I wasn't crazy, that they had truly turned me into nothing. But the humiliations didn't stop. In fact, they got worse, as if Nathan and Jessica sensed I was changing and needed to remind me of my place. 2 weeks after that conversation, I overheard they came to visit again. This time, they had news. "Mom," Nathan said without even greeting me, "we need to talk about something important. Jessica and I are looking for a house. We want to start a family, but everything is so expensive." I nodded. I said nothing. I just waited. And then Jessica spoke with that sweet, fake voice I hated so much. "Mom, we know this apartment is very big for you all alone. 2 bedrooms for 1 person. It's a waste. Don't you think you could live somewhere smaller, more comfortable? And maybe you could sell this place to us, at a fair price, of course. A family price. A family price." Those words sounded nice, but I knew what they meant. They meant they wanted me to gift them my only asset, to hand over the apartment my husband and I worked so hard to pay off for 30 years, just because they wanted to start their life without making sacrifices, without working hard like we did. I took a deep breath and told them, "I'm not ready to sell. This place has too many memories for me." Nathan frowned. "Mom, don't be selfish. You're not going to need it for much longer anyway. And at your age, what's the point of holding on to material things? You should be thinking about your son, about your family. Jessica nodded with fake tears in her eyes. It's just that we were really counting on this, Mom. We had already made plans. Plans. They had made plans with my life, with my home, without even asking me. And the worst part is, they said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, as if I owed them my existence. I stayed quiet. I didn't argue. I just told them I would think about it. And they left satisfied, sure that sooner or later I would give in. Because I always gave in. I always ended up giving them what they wanted, but this time something was different. This time as I closed the door behind them, I didn't feel guilt. I felt determination. I felt clarity. And I knew exactly what I had to do. 3 more weeks passed. 3 weeks where Nathan called me every day. Not to ask how I was, not to see if I needed anything, just to pressure me. Mom, have you thought about what we discussed? Mom, we found the perfect house, but we need the down payment. Mom, don't be difficult. And Jessica sent messages, long messages full of sad face emojis. Mom, I understand this is hard for you, but think about the grandchildren you could have. Don't you want your future grandchildren to have a good home? Every message was a blow. Every call was a reminder that to them, I was just a means to get what they wanted. And the anger kept growing. Cold, silent, powerful. Then came the moment that changed everything definitively. It was a Friday. I had gone to the bank for a simple errand. Update my information. Nothing important. But while I was waiting, I heard 2 women talking. One of them, younger, was saying to the other, "My mother-in-law finally sold her house. She bought a small apartment and used the rest to travel. She says she worked for others her whole life and now she wants to live for herself." The other woman laughed. "How brave." "I wouldn't have the courage to do that. My family would kill me." And the first one replied, "But it's her money, her life. Why should she have to ask permission?" Those words stayed with me. Why should I have to ask permission? It was my apartment, my life, my decision. No one had given it to me. No one had paid a single dollar of the mortgage except my husband and me. And yet I had spent months feeling like I had no right to do what I wanted with my own property. That somehow I owed Nathan everything just for being my son. But that wasn't love. That was manipulation. And I had allowed them to manipulate me for far too long. I left the bank with a clear idea, so clear that my own bravery scared me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. It was now or never. That same afternoon, I searched for real estate agencies online. I found one with good reviews. I called. A kind voice answered. "Good morning, how can we help you?" And I, with my voice trembling just a little, said, "I want to sell my apartment." Quickly, without a lot of advertising, without many people finding out. The woman on the other end asked a few questions. Address, size, condition. And then she said, "We can send someone tomorrow to do an evaluation." "Perfect," I replied, and I hung up. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, feeling my heart pound. I had just taken the first step, and there was no turning back. The next day, the agent came, a man in his 40s. Gray suit and a professional smile. He walked through the apartment, took pictures, made notes, and at the end he told me, "Ma'am, this place could sell for about $160,000. Maybe a little more if we do some minor repairs. But if you want to sell it fast, like you said, we could get $150,000 in less than a month." I nodded. "Let's do it." He looked at me surprised. "You don't want to check with your family first?" "Most people—" "No," I interrupted him. "I don't need to check with anyone. It's my decision." He smiled. He gave me papers to sign. And a week later, there was an interested buyer, a young couple who needed to move quickly for work. They offered $148,000 in cash, no loans, no complications. I accepted immediately. During that whole time, I didn't say anything to Nathan. He kept calling. He kept pressuring. "Mom, have you decided we need an answer?" "Jessica is very anxious." And I would answer evasively, "I'm still thinking about it, son. Just give me a little more time." And he would grumble in frustration, but he didn't push too hard, because he was sure that in the end, I would give in, like always. But while he waited confident, I was signing papers. closing the sale, receiving the money in my account, and looking for a new place for myself. A smaller apartment, 1 bedroom, in a quiet neighborhood. It cost $45,000. I bought it outright. No mortgage, no debts, and the rest of the money, over $100,000. I put it in an investment account the bank recommended. The move was fast. I hired a small company. I packed only the essentials: clothes, some books, photos of my husband, the memories that really mattered. The rest I sold or gave away. I didn't need much. I never had. And 3 weeks after making the decision, I was already living in my new apartment. It was small, yes, but it had natural light, a functional kitchen, and most importantly, it was completely mine. No one had a key. No one had set foot in that place before me. It was my space, my new beginning, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. But I knew the storm was coming. Nathan still didn't know anything, and when he found out, all hell would break loose. So I prepared. I kept all the sales documents in a folder. I printed the bank statements showing where the money was. And most importantly, I had secretly recorded the last few conversations with Nathan and Jessica. Those conversations where they talked about the apartment as if it were already theirs, where they planned what they would do with it when I died, where Jessica complained about having to pretend to like me. I had all the proof, and I was ready. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was arranging the last books on the shelf in my new apartment when the phone rang. It was Nathan. His voice sounded strangely cheerful. "Mom, hi, glad you picked up. Jessica and I want to invite you to dinner this Friday. We haven't spent time together in a while." I was silent for a few seconds. Nathan never invited me to dinner. Never. "Of course, son. What time?" "At 7. We'll pick you up. And don't worry about anything. We're paying for everything." I hung up and knew exactly what was happening. They had decided to change strategies. The direct pressure hadn't worked. Now came the soft manipulation, the fake gestures of affection, the forced kindness. But I was no longer the same naive woman from before. This time I knew exactly what to expect. Friday arrived and I dressed with care. I put on a brown dress I had bought years ago but rarely wore. I did my hair, put on a little makeup. I wanted to look good, strong. Nathan arrived on time. He rang the bell of the old apartment, the one that wasn't mine anymore. I waited a few seconds before going down. When I walked out of the building, I saw him standing by his car, frowning at his phone. "Mom!" he yelled when he saw me. "Why did you take so long? I was about to come up." "I had to get ready," I replied calmly. We got in the car. Jessica was in the passenger seat. She turned to me with a huge smile. "Mom, so good to see you. You look so elegant." Her words were honey, but her eyes were ice. We went to an Italian restaurant. It wasn't fancy, but it wasn't cheap either. Nathan chose a table in the corner, away from the noise, away from other people, a perfect place for a private conversation. We ordered food, pasta for Jessica, steak for Nathan. I ordered a simple salad. I wasn't very hungry. My stomach was in knots, not from fear but from anticipation. For the first few minutes they talked about trivial things, Nathan's job, a friend of Jessica's who got married, the weather. I just listened, nodded, smiled when necessary, and I waited, because I knew that at any moment the real reason for this dinner would come out. And it did, just as the main courses arrived. Nathan wiped his mouth with his napkin and looked at me directly. "Mom, we need to talk about something serious. Jessica and I have been thinking a lot, and we're worried about you." I looked up. "Worried about me?" "Yes," Jessica said, leaning forward. "You're all alone in that big apartment. At your age, anything could happen. A fall, a health problem, and there would be no one there to help you." Nathan nodded. "That's why we think it would be best if you moved in with us. Or if you sell the apartment and buy something smaller, safer, closer to us." "Ah," I said simply, and they waited. They waited for me to respond with gratitude, with relief, with that submission I had always shown. But I just took a sip of water and said, "It's very thoughtful of you to worry about me." "I'll think about it." Jessica blinked, confused. "But we need an answer soon, Mom." Nathan and I already found a house. We just need the down payment. And we thought that if you sell your apartment, you could give us a part. As a loan, or as an advance on the inheritance. Her words were so shameless I almost laughed. An advance on the inheritance. As if my death was a scheduled event on their calendar. As if I was just taking up space until they could cash in. "I'll think about it," I repeated with the same calm. And this time, Nathan tensed up. "Mom, we've been talking about this for months. You can't keep putting us off." I felt the anger bubbling in my chest, but I didn't let it out. Not yet. Instead, I smiled. "Son, it's a big decision. I can't make it that quickly. Give me a little more time." Jessica let out a dramatic sigh. "It's just, Mom, we were really counting on that money. We already told the owner of the house that we want it. If we don't make the down payment soon, we're going to lose it. And there's no other option. Our only plan is your apartment." How convenient, I thought. Their only plan was my sacrifice. We finished dinner in an awkward silence. Nathan paid the bill annoyed, and when they dropped me off at my building, Jessica gave me a cold hug. "Think about it hard, Mom. We don't want to pressure you. We just want what's best for everyone." The following days were an avalanche of messages. Jessica sent me pictures of the house they wanted to buy. "Look, Mom, it has 3 bedrooms, a yard, a garage. It would be perfect for when we have kids. Your grandkids could play here." Every message was a hook. Every photo was manipulation. They were trying to make me imagine a future that would never exist. Because I knew the truth. I knew that if I gave them the money, I would never see it again. I knew the grandkids were just a fantasy to soften me up. I knew that once I was useful to them, they would discard me just like they always had. And I wasn't going to let that happen. Not this time. Nathan called too, but his calls were different. Less sweet, more demanding. "Mom, I need an answer. Yes or no. It's simple." "It's not simple, son. It's my life. It's my property. But I'm your son, your only family. I don't owe you my whole life just because you're my son." There was a silence on the other end. A heavy, dangerous silence. "So you're saying you're not going to help us?" "I'm saying I need time to think." Nathan hung up without saying goodbye, and I stared at the phone, feeling the last thread of love I had for him break completely. Because a son who loves you doesn't pressure you like that. A son who loves you doesn't make you feel guilty for wanting to live your own life. A week later, Jessica showed up at my building unannounced. She rang the bell insistently. "Mom, open up please, we need to talk." I was about to leave for my new apartment. I had left a few things I needed to pick up. I opened the door carefully. Jessica's eyes were red. She looked like she had been crying. "Can I come in?" We sat in the empty living room. Most of the furniture was already gone. She looked around confused, but said nothing. "Mom," she began, her voice trembling. "I came to apologize. I know we've been very insistent. I know we've pressured you. But we're desperate. Nathan and I have been saving for years, and it's never enough. Everything is so expensive. And when we thought about your apartment, we were filled with hope." Hope. What an interesting word to describe greed. Jessica continued. "I don't want you to think we only care about the money. We love you, Mom. Really. And we want you to be part of our lives, to live with us, to be the grandmother to our children. But to do that, we need that space. We need that house. And you could make that happen. You could be our salvation." Her words were perfect, rehearsed, but empty. Because if they really loved me, they wouldn't be there asking me to gift them everything. They would be there simply to be with me. "Jessica," I said finally, "let me ask you something. If I didn't have this apartment, if I had nothing of value, would you still visit me?" She blinked. "Of course, Mom. What kind of question is that? Then why in these last few months have you only sought me out to talk about the apartment? Why do you never call just to see how I am? Why does every conversation end with the same request? Jessica opened her mouth, but no words came out, because there was no answer. Or rather, the answer was obvious, and she didn't want to admit it. She was silent for a few seconds, and then she stood up. "I think I came at a bad time. We'll talk later." And she left, leaving me alone in that empty room. But I didn't feel alone. I felt free, because every conversation, every manipulation, every lie only confirmed that I had made the right decision. That night, sitting in my new apartment, I reviewed all the documents again. The deed to the new place, the sales receipts from the old one, the recordings I had made, everything was in order. Everything was ready. All that was left was the final moment, the moment of confrontation. And I knew it would come soon, because Nathan and Jessica were not patient, and their desperation would make them make a mistake I was waiting for. I took a deep breath, drank some hot tea, and mentally prepared myself for what was coming, because the war was just beginning, and this time I had all the weapons. The moment arrived 2 weeks later. I knew it would eventually happen, that Nathan would lose his patience and show up unannounced, that he would seek to confront me, to force me to give him an answer. And that day finally came. It was Saturday morning. I was in my new apartment drinking coffee by the window, watching life pass by on the street. My phone rang. It was Nathan. "Mom, I'm coming to your house. We need to finish this conversation today." "You can't keep avoiding us." "I'll be there in half an hour." And he hung up before I could reply. I stared at the phone. My heart was beating fast, but not with fear. It was pure adrenaline. I had waited for this moment. I had prepared for it. And now it was here. I got dressed calmly, comfortable pants, a cream-colored blouse, nothing special. I put my hair up, put on my shoes, and I left for the old apartment. Yes, I still had the keys. The new owner wasn't moving in until the following week, so technically I could still get in. I arrived before Nathan. I went up the stairs, opened the door, and I waited. The apartment was almost empty. Only a few boxes were left in the corners. The echo of my footsteps resonated on the bare walls. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, and I waited. 5 minutes later, I heard hurried footsteps in the hallway. The door flew open. Nathan burst in like a hurricane. Jessica was right behind him. "Mom," he started to say. But he stopped dead when he saw the empty apartment. His face changed from confusion to alarm in a second. "What is going on here? Where is the furniture? Where is everything?" I stood up slowly. "I sold it," I said calmly. "You sold the furniture?" Jessica asked in a high-pitched voice. "Not just the furniture," I replied. "I sold the apartment too." The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan stared at me as if he didn't understand the words he had just heard. Jessica had turned pale. "What did you say?" Nathan murmured. "I sold the apartment," I repeated louder this time. 3 weeks ago. The papers are signed. The transfer is done. The new owner moves in next week." Nathan exploded. "What do you mean you sold the apartment? I already promised it to my wife. Give me the money from the sale now." His voice was a scream. His hands were shaking. Jessica started to cry. "But Mom, how could you do this to us? We were counting on this place. We had plans. We had dreams." "And you destroyed them." I stood firm. I didn't move a muscle. I looked them straight in the eyes. "This apartment was mine. It wasn't yours. It was never yours. And I could do whatever I wanted with it." Nathan took a step toward me. His face was red with rage. "Don't you dare say that. I am your son, your only family. That apartment was my inheritance. It was the only thing you were going to leave me." "Your inheritance," I repeated calmly. "Nathan, you are 38 years old. You have a job. You have your health. You have your life ahead of you. And you were already planning what to do with my things when I died. That's not being a son. That's being a vulture." Jessica screamed, offended. "How dare you talk to him like that? He gave you everything. He took care of you after your husband died." I let out a bitter laugh. "Took care of me? Jessica, your husband visited me once a month. He only called me when he needed something. and you two spent the last few years treating me like a burden, like something to be tolerated until it ceased to exist. But Mom, Nathan started, his voice softer, now desperate. My wife and I can't be homeless. We need that money. It's yours by right. By right? I asked, incredulous. What right? The right of being your son. The right of being born. That doesn't give you a right over my life or what I decide to do with mine. Nathan ran his hands through his hair. He was desperate. His perfect plan had collapsed. Then at least give us the money from the sale. If you already sold it, you have the cash. Give it to us. We can still buy the house. Please. It was the first time in years I had heard him say, please, but it wasn't a genuine please. It was the please of someone who is losing and knows it. Jessica approached me. Mom, please think about us. Think about the grandchildren you could have. If we don't have a house, how are we going to start a family? How are we going to give you those grandchildren you want so badly? The grandchildren I want so badly, I repeated softly. Jessica, you never wanted to give me grandchildren. You wanted to use the idea of grandchildren to manipulate me, to make me feel guilty, to force me to hand over everything. She stepped back, as if I had slapped her. That's not true. We do want a family. So what happened to the money? Nathan interrupted. Where is it? In my account, I replied. I used part of it to buy myself a new apartment. Smaller, more comfortable for me. And the rest is invested. For my old age, for my peace of mind, for me. Nathan looked at me with pure hatred. You're selfish, a selfish old woman who only thinks about herself. And what did you expect me to do? I shouted back. Gift you everything and be left with nothing. Live on handouts, hoping you'd be kind enough to visit me once a year. Jessica was sobbing dramatically. But we wanted you with us. We were going to take care of you. A lie, I said firmly. You didn't want to take care of me. You wanted my money. And when you had it, you would have put me in the cheapest nursing home you could find. Nathan shook his head. You're paranoid. You're making things up. I'm not making anything up, I said. And then I took my phone out of my pocket. I have proof. Proof of what? Jessica asked, her voice trembling. Of everything. Of every conversation where you talked about me as if I were already dead. Of every plan you made behind my back. Of every cruel word you said, thinking I couldn't hear you. The color drained from Nathan's face. You recorded us. I recorded you, I confirmed, because I needed to be sure I wasn't imagining things. I needed proof that you really only saw me as a means to get what you wanted. Nathan took a step toward me, fists clenched. Give me that phone, now. No, I replied, stepping back. These recordings are my insurance, just in case you decide to do something stupid. Like what? Jessica asked. Like try to sue me, like try to take what's mine. Like invent that I'm senile or unfit to make decisions. I've seen enough stories to know how this works. Nathan laughed humorlessly. You're crazy, completely crazy. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I've finally regained my sanity after years of letting you walk all over me. There was a moment of tense silence. The three of us stared at each other. The air was thick with anger, with pain, with truths that had finally come to light. Then Jessica spoke, her voice cold. We will never forgive you for this. Never. I can live with that, I replied. Nathan pointed to the door. Let's go, Jessica. There's nothing for us here anymore. She followed him, but before leaving she turned back to me. I hope that money makes you happy, Mom. Because it's going to cost you your only family. It already cost me my family a long time ago, I said. I just didn't realize it until now. They left, slamming the door. The sound echoed in the empty apartment, and I stood there, alone. But I didn't feel alone. I felt victorious. I felt free. For the first time in years, I had defended what was mine. I had said no, and I had survived. I sat on the floor again. My legs were trembling from the adrenaline. My heart was still pounding. But there was something else, something warm in my chest. It was relief. It was peace. It was the feeling of having taken my life back. I took out my phone and looked at the saved recordings. They were my shield, my protection, in case Nathan tried anything legal, in case he tried to paint this story another way. But something told me he wouldn't, because he knew he had lost. And losers rarely admit their defeat publicly. I stayed there a while longer, silently saying goodbye to this place that had been my home for so many years. But I didn't feel sadness. I felt gratitude, because this apartment had given me refuge, and now it had given me freedom. I got up from the floor and walked to the window. From there I could see the street. I saw Nathan and Jessica leave the building. He was walking fast, fists clenched. She was behind him, wiping her tears dramatically. They got in the car, but they didn't start it right away. I saw them arguing inside. Jessica was waving her hands wildly. Nathan hit the steering wheel hard. And then something unexpected happened. The car didn't move. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. They were still there. And suddenly I understood. They were coming back. They weren't finished. They were going to try one last time. And sure enough, the car door opened. Nathan got out. He looked up, toward the window where I was standing. And he started walking back to the building. I stepped away from the window, took a deep breath, and waited. The footsteps on the stairs sounded heavy, tired. When the door opened, only Nathan came in. Jessica had stayed in the car. My son looked different now. There was no more rage on his face. There was something worse. Desperation. "Mom," he said hoarsely, "please, we need to talk calmly." He didn't look me in the eye. He just stood in the middle of the empty apartment, shoulders slumped. "Then let's talk," I said, crossing my arms. He took a deep breath. "Okay, you're right. We were too insistent. Too pushy. But we really do need that money. It's not a whim. It's our only chance to have something of our own, to build a life. And I thought that you, as my mother, would want to help me with that." "As your mother," I repeated. "Nathan, I helped you my entire life. I gave you everything I could. I paid for your college. I supported you when you changed majors 3 times. I lent you money you never paid back. And now that I finally decide to do something for myself, for my future, I'm selfish." He shook his head. "It's not that. It's that this money is different. It's a lot. It's enough to change our lives. And you're older now. You've already lived your life. We're just starting ours." His words hit me like stones. You've already lived your life. As if at 65 I had no right to anything anymore. As if I should just sit and wait for death while they enjoyed what I had built. "Nathan," I said firmly, "I am 65 years old. Not 80, not 90. I could still live 20 or 30 more years, and I am not going to spend them depending on anyone. I'm not going to be left with nothing just so you can have everything." "But that money belongs to me," he yelled. "It's my inheritance." "No," I replied, raising my voice too. "An inheritance is what I leave you when I die. Not what you take while I'm alive." He ran his hands over his face. He was on the verge of collapse. "Then at least give me half, $50,000. With that we could make the down payment. I'm not asking for all of it, just a part. And we'll pay you back, I swear." I laughed humorlessly. "You'll pay me back? With what you already owe me, $15,000 from previous loans you never paid back." Nathan went quiet, because he knew it was true. Over the years he had come to ask me for money dozens of times. For the car, for the wedding, for a class, for emergencies that were never really emergencies. And he always promised to pay it back, but he never did. And I never insisted, because he was my son. And a mother doesn't charge her son. Or so I thought before. But now I saw the truth. It wasn't generosity. It was weakness. It was allowing myself to be used over and over again. "Nathan," I said calmer, "I am not giving you the money. Not all of it and not part of it. That money is for me, for my peace of mind. To know that if I get sick, if I need help, if something happens, I have a way to pay for it. Because clearly I can't count on you." "That's not fair," he said, his voice breaking. "I would be there if you needed me, really." Just like you were for the last 7 years, I asked sarcastically, visiting me once a month, calling me only when you needed something, treating me like old furniture that was in your way? He opened his mouth to protest, but nothing came out, because there was no defense, there was no excuse, and we both knew it. "Mom," he whispered finally, "please, just this once. I'm begging you. Give me the money." Seeing my son beg should have softened me. I should have felt pity, but I felt nothing, because his pleas weren't out of love. They were out of desperation, out of greed, out of fear of losing what was never his. "No," I said with finality, "and now I need you to leave. I have things to do." He looked at me in disbelief. "You're kicking me out." "I'm asking you to respect my decision and leave," I replied. Nathan took a step toward me. His face changed again. The desperation turned into something darker, a threat. "You know what, Mom? Maybe you're right. Maybe you're not my responsibility anymore. So when you're old, when you're sick, when you need help, don't call me. Because I won't be there for you either." His words were meant to hurt me. They were meant to make me afraid, but they only confirmed what I already knew, that he had never been there for me, and he never would be. "I can live with that," I said calmly. "But wait," I said as he was about to leave. "There's something else you need to know." A second piece of news. Nathan stopped. He turned around slowly. "What else could there be?" he asked, exhausted. I took out my phone. I swiped until I found what I was looking for, and I showed it to him. He squinted, trying to see. It was a document. A legal document. "What is that?" he asked, moving closer. "It's my will," I replied. "I updated it last week." Nathan grabbed the phone from my hands and started to read. I watched his face change, how confusion turned to shock, how shock turned to horror. "This can't be real," he muttered. "It's completely real," I confirmed. "Signed before a notary. Completely legal." In the will it was specified that the new apartment I bought, plus all the money I had left, would be donated to a charity for abandoned seniors when I died. Nathan would receive nothing, absolutely nothing. "You're disinheriting me," he said, his voice trembling. "I'm teaching you a lesson," I replied. "The lesson that family isn't about waiting for inheritances. It's about love, respect, about being present. And you did none of that." He started to shake. His whole body was shaking, his hands, his legs, even his voice shook when he spoke. "But Mom, my wife and I can't be homeless. You don't have jobs, you don't have savings, you don't have incomes." "Of course you do," I said. "You have all of those things. You just don't have my money. And that is your real desperation." Nathan dropped the phone. He put his hands on his head, and for the first time in this whole situation, I saw him truly broken. It wasn't an act, it wasn't manipulation. It was the genuine collapse of someone who just lost everything he expected to get without effort. "How could you do this to me?" he whispered. "How could I?" I repeated. "Nathan, I didn't do anything to you. You did this to yourself. You spent years treating me like an ATM, like something that was only useful when you needed money. You never asked how I was. You were never interested in my life. You never saw me as a person, only as a resource. And now that the resource has dried up, you're falling apart. Because you never learned to stand on your own 2 feet. Because you always expected me to solve your life for you." He slid to the floor, sitting with his back against the wall, just as I had been a few minutes ago, but our postures meant opposite things. I had been in a position of power. He was in a position of defeat. "Are you going to regret this?" he said, not looking at me. "One day, you'll be alone, sick, scared. And you're going to regret this." "Maybe," I replied, "or maybe I'll find peace knowing I lived my last years with dignity. That I didn't let myself be used, that I reclaimed my worth." He let out a bitter laugh. "Your worth? What worth do you have if nobody loves you? If your only son hates you? I'd rather you hate me for defending myself," I said, "than love me only for what you can get from me." Nathan stood up slowly. He looked at me one last time, and in his eyes I saw something I had never seen before: total surrender. "I hope you're happy with your decision," he said, dragging his words. "I hope that money keeps you warm at night when you're completely alone." "I was already alone, Nathan. You were just taking up space." He left without closing the door. I heard him go down the stairs. I heard the car start, and I heard it drive away. The silence that remained was absolute. I sat on the floor again. My legs wouldn't hold me. My whole body was shaking from the released tension. But I didn't cry. I didn't feel sadness. I felt something strange, something I hadn't felt in years. I felt whole, as if a part of me that had been asleep had finally woken up, as if I had recovered something I thought I had lost forever: my dignity. I stayed in that empty apartment for almost an hour, sitting on the floor, looking at the bare walls, processing everything that had just happened. I had no regrets. Not for 1 second did I doubt my decision. But there was something in the air, a feeling of an ending, of closure. This place had been my home for 30 years. I had cooked thousands of meals here. I had mourned my husband's death here. I had grown old in solitude here. And now here, I had reclaimed my freedom. I stood up slowly, walked through each empty room. I touched the walls with my fingertips. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for everything." And I walked out, closing the door behind me for the last time. When I got to my new apartment, the contrast was absolute. The windows let in natural light. The space was small but cozy. Everything smelled new, like possibilities, like beginnings. I made myself some tea. I sat by the window, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Genuinely. Not a forced smile, not a polite smile, but a smile of real satisfaction. I had done something for myself. I had chosen my well-being over the manipulation of others, and that felt powerful. The phone rang, interrupting my moment of peace. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but finally I did. "Hello." On the other end was a female voice I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Elsa." "This is Rachel, Jessica's sister. I need to talk to you." My stomach tightened. Rachel. Jessica had told her sister everything, and now came round two, the attempt to make me feel guilty through someone else. "Go on," I replied in a neutral voice. "Mrs. Elsa, Jessica told me what happened. And I want you to know that I'm very disappointed in you. How could you do that to your own son? He needed you, and you turned your back on him." I took a deep breath. "Rachel, with all due respect, you don't know the whole story. You only know the version your sister told you. The version where I'm the villain. But there's much more to it than that." She huffed. "What more could there be? You sold the apartment your son needed. That's all I need to know." "My son didn't need that apartment," I replied firmly. "My son wanted that apartment." "There is a huge difference," Rachel kept talking. Her voice was harsh, accusing. "Jessica is devastated. Nathan is devastated. You destroyed their dreams, their future plans. And for what? To buy yourself a smaller apartment and hoard money you won't even live long enough to spend. It's pure selfishness." I listened to her words without interrupting. I let her say everything she had to say, and when she finally fell silent, waiting for my response, I spoke with a calm that surprised even me. "Rachel, I understand you want to defend your sister. It's natural. But let me ask you something. When was the last time Nathan and Jessica visited me without asking for something? When was the last time they called just to see how I was? When was the last time they treated me like a person and not like a bank?" There was an awkward silence on the other end. "They have their lives," Rachel finally said with less conviction. "Their jobs, their responsibilities." "Exactly," I replied. "They have their lives, and I have mine. And my life does not consist of sacrificing myself forever so they can live comfortably." Rachel tried to argue more. "But Mrs. Elsa, you're the mom. Parents should always help their children. They should always be there." "I was there for 38 years, I said, raising my voice a little. "I gave my son everything I could. But there comes a point when children must stand on their own. And if at 38 Nathan still expects me to solve his life, then I failed as a mother. But I am not going to continue failing by allowing him to use me. Rachel hung up without saying goodbye. And I stared at the phone. I knew it wouldn't be the last call, that Jessica and Nathan would try to use other people to pressure me, to make me feel guilty, to break me. But I had already made my decision, and no one was going to make me change my mind. That night before sleeping, I checked my bank account online. There was the money, over $100,000. It was more money than I had ever had at one time in my entire life, and it was all mine. No one could take it from me. No one could demand it. It was my safety net, my freedom materialized in numbers on a screen. I slept peacefully that night. No nightmares, no anguish, just peace. The following days were strangely normal. I dedicated myself to settling into my new apartment. I bought plants for the windows. I hung light beige curtains. I organized my books on the small bookshelf. Everything I did reminded me that this space was mine, that no one would come to judge it, that no one would come to tell me I should change this or that. It was my refuge, my kingdom. A week later, I received a text message from Nathan. It was long, full of carefully chosen words. "Mom," it began, "I've had time to think, and I think we both said hurtful things. I know I've failed you as a son. I know I haven't been present as I should have been. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. You are my mother. And you always will be. I'd like for us to talk, so we can fix this." I read the message 3 times, looking for sincerity between the lines. But I didn't find it, because at no point did it say, "I'm sorry." At no point did it acknowledge the real damage he had done. It was just a generic apology. One more attempt to get closer to see if he could get something. I didn't reply. I just put the phone away and went on with my day. 2 days later, another message arrived. This one was from Jessica. "Mom, please don't close the door on us. I know we made mistakes, but everyone deserves a second chance. Nathan is in a bad way. He's barely eating, barely sleeping. He keeps thinking about how to fix things with you. Please give him that chance." I didn't reply to that one either, because I knew it was theater, emotional manipulation, a last-ditch effort to soften me up. One afternoon, while I was sunbathing in a park near my new apartment, I saw an older woman sitting on a bench. She was alone, feeding pigeons with breadcrumbs. I approached and sat down next to her. "It's a beautiful day," I said. She smiled. "Beautiful," she confirmed. "I come here every day. It's my moment of peace." I asked her if she had family. She nodded. 3 children, 8 grandchildren. "But I hardly ever see them. They're busy with their lives. And I understand. I don't want to be a burden." Her words reminded me of myself a few months ago. "You are not a burden," I told her. "You are a person, and you deserve to be treated as one." She looked at me surprised, and then she smiled with tears in her eyes. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." We talked for almost an hour. She told me about her life, her struggles, her disappointments, and I told her mine. I told her about Nathan, about Jessica, about the apartment, about my decision, and she listened without judging. When I finished, she took my hand. "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "I wish I'd had your courage, but I'm scared. Scared of being completely alone." "Being alone isn't the worst thing that can happen," I told her. "The worst thing is being surrounded by people who make you feel alone." She nodded slowly, as if those words had touched something deep inside her. We said goodbye with a hug, and as I walked back home, I felt something new: connection, empathy, purpose. I had spent so much time focused on my broken relationship with Nathan that I had forgotten there are other people in the world, other stories, other solitudes I could accompany. That night I made a decision. I would look for activity groups for seniors, classes for something, workshops, whatever. I needed to build a new life, a life that didn't revolve around my son. I went online and started searching. I found a painting workshop held on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. I had never painted in my life, But something in the description caught my eye. Expression without judgment, creativity without pressure, community without commitment. I signed up before I could regret it. The first workshop was in 3 days, and although I was nervous, I was also excited, an excitement I hadn't felt in years, the excitement of starting something new, of discovering a part of myself I had never explored. Meanwhile, the messages from Nathan and Jessica kept coming, more desperate each time, more manipulative. "Mom, please. You can't ignore us forever. We are your family." "Mom, Nathan is considering therapy. He really wants to change. He just needs your support." "Mom, at least answer, so we know you're okay. We're worried about you." Every message was an attempt to reopen the door I had closed, but I was no longer the same woman who could be convinced with pretty words. I was someone new, someone stronger, someone who had finally learned that saying no doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person with boundaries, and boundaries aren't walls, they are doors. Doors that you decide when to open and when to keep closed. On Sunday, I received one last call. This time it was from a number I recognized. It was Amelia, a distant cousin I hadn't seen in years. "Elsa," she said, her voice serious. "Nathan called me. He told me what happened, and I want to tell you that I understand your position. But I also want to ask you to consider forgiveness. Family is the most important thing, and grudges only hurt you." I listened to her words. I took a deep breath, and I replied, "Amelia, it's not a grudge, it's a decision. The decision not to allow them to keep hurting me. And if family is so important, why didn't Nathan show it when he could? Why does he only remember family when he needs something?" She didn't know what to answer, and I took advantage of the silence. "I appreciate your call, Amelia, but this decision is already made." And I hung up. Tuesday arrived faster than I expected. It was the day of my first painting class. I woke up early, ate breakfast calmly. I dressed in comfortable clothes, gray pants, a soft ivory-colored blouse. Nothing special, but I felt good. When I got to the place, it was a small room full of light. There were 6 other people, all women, all over 50. The teacher's name was Rose. She had white hair pulled back in a messy bun and a warm smile that made you feel welcome immediately. "Good morning," she said in a soft voice. "Today, we are not going to worry about making something perfect. We are just going to let our hands express what we feel." And just like that, my new life began. At first, I felt clumsy. The brush trembled in my hand. The colors mixed in strange ways on the canvas. But Rose walked between the tables saying beautiful things. There are no mistakes in art, only discoveries. After an hour, something inside me relaxed. I stopped thinking. I stopped judging every stroke. And I just painted. I don't know what I was creating. It was abstract, chaotic, but it was mine. And when the class ended, I felt lighter, as if I had let out something I had been holding in for years. The other women also shared their work. Each one had a story. Each one had her battles, and no one judged anyone. It was a safe space, a space where I could just be Elsa, not someone's mother, not someone's widow, just me. After class, one of the women approached me. Her name was Alexandra. She had short, curly hair and a contagious laugh. "It's your first time, right?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. "It shows. But in a good way. You can tell you have a lot to let out." We laughed together. She invited me for coffee. We went to a nearby cafe, and as we drank our hot cups, Alexandra told me her story. She had been married for 40 years. Her husband died 3 years ago, and her children lived in other cities. They visited once a year if she was lucky. "At first, I got really depressed," she told me. "I felt like my life was over. But one day I decided that if no one was going to live my life for me, then I would have to do it. And here I am, painting, dancing, living." Her words resonated deeply with me. It was exactly what I was doing, taking my life back. Alexandra became my first real friend in years. We started meeting up after every class, sometimes for coffee, sometimes we'd walk in the park, and we always talked about everything, about nothing, no filters, no judgments. It was liberating to have someone who understood what it meant to reinvent yourself at this age. 2 weeks passed, 2 weeks of peace, of new routines, of days filled with small joys. But of course, the peace couldn't last forever. One Friday afternoon, someone knocked on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting visitors. I looked through the peephole, and my heart stopped for a second. It was Jessica. I opened the door just a crack. "What are you doing here?" I asked, not inviting her in. Jessica looked different. "I just want to talk. 5 minutes, that's all." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, but another part was curious. What could she want now I opened the door completely, but I didn't let her in? "Talk," I said, crossing my arms. Jessica took a deep breath. "I came to apologize. Really, Nathan doesn't know I'm here. He's angry. He says he's never going to forgive you. But I can't live like this. I can't live with this tension, with this grudge. I need you to know that I'm sorry, that I understand why you did what you did." Her words sounded rehearsed, like a prepared speech. "You're sorry," I repeated, "or you're sorry you lost access to the money." Jessica looked down. "I know you think we only cared about the money, and maybe at first we did. But we weren't bad people, Mom. We were just desperate, scared of the future. And we saw your apartment as the solution to all our problems. But that didn't give us the right to treat you the way we did." At least she admitted something. That was more than Nathan had done. "I appreciate your apology, Jessica, but it doesn't change anything." She looked up quickly. "But we could start over. We could build a real relationship. Without interests, without pressure, just as family." I sighed. "I wish I could believe you. But trusting again takes time. And honestly, I don't know if I have that time or that energy." Jessica nodded slowly. Tears started to roll down her cheeks. "I understand. I just wanted you to know that not all of us are like Nathan. That I do regret it. And that if one day you decide to give us another chance, I'll be here." She turned to leave, but before she went down the stairs, I turned to her. "Jessica." She stopped. "If you really want to show me you've changed, don't do it with words. Do it with actions and not towards me. Let's do it for yourself. Build your life without depending on inheritances, without waiting for others to solve your problems. That's the only way I could ever consider you someone truly different." She nodded, and she left. I don't know if she would really change. Probably not. But at least she had tried something Nathan never did: acknowledge her mistake. That night, I sat and thought about everything that had happened in the last month. I had sold my apartment. I had confronted my son. I had set boundaries. I had started painting. I had made a friend. I had reclaimed my dignity. And although there were still moments of doubt, of sadness, of wondering if I had done the right thing, deep down, I knew the answer. I had done exactly what I needed to do. I had saved myself, because no one else was going to do it. The following days continued peacefully. Painting class became my favorite time of the week. Rose taught us to use different techniques: watercolor, oil, acrylic. And every time I felt freer, more myself. One afternoon, while I was painting, Rose came over to my table. "Elsa," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Have you noticed how your painting has changed since you started?" I looked at her confused. "How so? At first you painted with small strokes, fearful, controlled. But now your strokes are broad, confident, free. That speaks of an internal change, of a liberation." I felt a lump in my throat, because she was right. I had changed, and that change was reflected even in things I hadn't noticed. "I went through something difficult recently," I told her. "I had to make decisions that hurt, but they were necessary." Rose smiled. "The best decisions always hurt at first, but then they give you wings." Those words stayed with me. They gave me wings. Yes, that's exactly what I felt, as if after years of being tied down, I could finally fly. Alexandra and I started planning a short trip, just a weekend, to a nearby city, to see museums, to walk aimlessly, to enjoy life without asking anyone for permission. It was something small, but it meant everything. It meant that I could make plans, that my life wasn't over, that there were still adventures to be lived. When I told Alexandra about my situation with Nathan, she didn't judge me. She just hugged me and said, "Children don't understand that parents have a right to live too. They think we were born just to serve them. But you taught them something important. You taught them boundaries." 3 months had passed since the confrontation, 3 months of tranquility, of new routines, of painting, of friendship with Alexandra, of afternoons in the park, of nights reading on my small but comfortable couch. My life had found a rhythm that made me happy. It wasn't an explosive happiness, it was a quiet happiness, deep, real. But as it often happens, just when you get used to the peace, the past comes knocking again. It was a Saturday morning. I was making coffee when the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole, and this time it wasn't Jessica. It was Nathan, alone, without his wife. He looked different, thinner, with an unkempt beard, with dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights. I hesitated before opening, but something in his posture made me do it. I opened the door but stayed in the doorway, blocking the entrance. "What do you want, Nathan?" He held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "I just want to talk. No yelling, no demands. Just talk, please." There was something in his voice that sounded different, more broken, more real. I let him pass. We sat in the small living room. He looked around with a strange expression. "This is your new place?" he asked. "Yes." "It's nice. Small, but enough for me." He nodded in silence. There was a long, awkward silence, and then he spoke. "Mom, I came to tell you that you were right." "About everything?" I raised an eyebrow, surprised. Nathan never admitted mistakes. "Go on," I said. He ran his hands over his face. "The last 3 months have been the worst of my life. Jessica and I almost separated. We lost the house we wanted. I had problems at work from being so distracted, and all because I couldn't accept that I had lost something that was never mine." I stayed quiet, letting him talk. "I went to therapy," he continued. "The therapist made me see things I didn't want to accept. He made me see that I had treated you like a resource, like something I could use when I needed it. I never saw you as a person with your own needs, with a right to your own life. And that's unforgivable." I felt something moving in my chest. It wasn't relief, not yet, but it was something. "I'm glad you're going to therapy," I said carefully. "It's a good step." Nathan looked up. There were tears in his eyes. "I didn't come to ask for money. I didn't come to ask you to change your will. I just came to tell you. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. And I understand if you can never forgive me." His words sounded sincere. For the first time in years, they sounded genuine. But I had learned to be cautious. "I appreciate your apology, Nathan. But apologies don't erase years of mistreatment. They don't erase the pain you caused me." He nodded. "I know. And I don't expect them to. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I did. And that I'm trying to be better. Not for you, not even for Jessica, but for myself. Because I don't like the person I had become." We sat in silence for a few more minutes, and then I asked him something I had wanted to know for a long time. "Nathan, why did you never visit me? Why did it always seem like an obligation to spend time with me?" He took a deep breath. "Because you reminded me of Dad. And his death hurt me so much that I preferred to distance myself from everything that reminded me of him, including you. I know it sounds horrible, I know it's selfish, but it's the truth." His words hit me hard, because I finally had an answer. It wasn't a good answer, but at least it was honest. "I miss your father too," I said softly. "Every single day. But pushing me away didn't make the pain less. It just made me feel more alone. He nodded, tears rolling down his face. "I wish I could go back in time," he said, his voice cracking. "Do things differently. But I can't. The only thing I can do is try to be better from here on out. If you ever decide to give me another chance, I promise it will be different. But if not, I understand that too." I looked at my son crying in front of me, and I felt something complex. It wasn't total forgiveness, not yet, but it wasn't hatred either. It was something in between. It was recognition of his humanity, his flaws, his capacity for change. "I need time," I told him finally. "A lot of time. I can't just forget everything and trust you again. But I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you being honest." "That's more than I expected." He got up to leave. Before opening the door, he turned. Can I call you once in a while? Just to see how you are, without asking for anything." I thought for a moment. "You can. But if you ever try to manipulate me again, if you ever treat me like you did before, there will be no more chances." He nodded. "I understand." And he left. When I closed the door, I stood there for a long time, processing, feeling. I didn't know if Nathan would really change, if this time was different. But at least he had taken the first step. He had acknowledged his mistake, and that was more than Jessica had done, more than anyone had done. That afternoon I went to my painting class. Rose noticed something different about me. "Something happened?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. "My son came to apologize. And I don't know how to feel about it." She smiled with understanding. "You don't have to know how to feel. Feelings are complex. They can coexist. You can be hurt and hopeful at the same time." I painted that day with a different intensity. I used dark colors mixed with bright ones, representing exactly what I felt, the darkness of the past mixed with the light of a possible future. When I finished, Alexandra came over to see my work. "It's beautiful," she said, "and sad, and hopeful, all at the same time." "Exactly," I replied. "That's how I feel." That night alone in my apartment, I thought a lot about forgiveness, about whether it was weak to forgive someone who had hurt you so much, or if it was strong. And I came to a conclusion. The forgiveness wasn't for Nathan. The forgiveness was for me, to release the weight I had been carrying, to be able to move forward without resentment poisoning my soul. But forgiving didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean allowing him to hurt me again. It meant letting go and keep walking. The next few days were lighter, as if something heavy had been lifted from my shoulders. Nathan called me twice that week. Short conversations, simple, asking how I was, briefly telling me about his day, asking for nothing, no manipulation. And although I still kept my guard up, I started to feel that maybe, just maybe, there was hope. Alexandra and I finally took our trip. We went to a coastal city, we walked on the beach, visited art galleries, ate seafood in little restaurants, and I laughed. I really laughed, with my whole body, with all my soul. I laughed in a way I hadn't laughed in years, and in one of those moments, walking along the shore with my feet in the cold water, Alexandra told me something I'll never forget. "Elsa," she said, taking my hand, "I'm proud of you, of how you defended yourself, of how you took your life back. You are braver than you think." Her words filled me with an emotion that was hard to describe, because for so long I had felt weak, cowardly, invisible. But now someone saw me as brave, and maybe she was right. Maybe I had been brave all this time without realizing it. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's acting in spite of it. And I had done exactly that. That night, lying in the hotel room staring at the ceiling, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt gratitude. Gratitude for my life, for my decisions, for my freedom, for everything I had lived through and survived. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what happened with Nathan, no matter if our relationship was repaired or not, I would be okay, because I finally had myself. 6 months had passed since that day of the confrontation, half a year of learning to live again, of discovering who I was without the chains of guilt, without the weight of others' expectations. It was a Sunday morning. The sun streamed through my window, illuminating the plants that now filled every corner of my small apartment. I got up without rushing, made my coffee, and sat by the window as I did every morning. But this time there was something different in the air, a feeling of fullness, of complete closure. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Alexandra. "Ready for the exhibition today?" I smiled. Today was a special day. Rose had organized a small exhibition of her students' work, and I had decided to participate. I dressed with care, an olive green dress I had bought the week before. I did my hair, put on light makeup, and I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was different from the one 6 months ago. There was something in her eyes, strength, peace, recovered dignity. I arrived at the art room an hour early. My 3 paintings were already hanging on the wall. The first one was dark, full of grays and blacks. It represented my life before. The second one was chaotic. Bright colors mixed with shadows. It represented the conflict, the awakening. And the third one was luminous, full of yellows and oranges. It represented my present, my freedom. Rose approached with a huge smile. "Elsa, your works tell a complete story. It's beautiful to see your evolution." People started to arrive, other students, family, friends. Alexandra arrived with a bouquet of flowers for me. "I'm so proud of you," she said, hugging me tightly. We walked among the artworks. Each one told a different story. Each woman had captured her battles on those canvases, and there was something powerful in that, in seeing how pain could be transformed into beauty, in seeing how creativity healed us. I was explaining the meaning of my second painting to a lady when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Mom." I turned around slowly. Nathan was standing in the doorway, alone, with a small bouquet of wildflowers in his hands. He looked nervous, unsure, as if he didn't know if he was welcome or not. I approached him with measured steps. "What are you doing here?" I asked, without hostility, but with caution. "You told me you had this exhibition," he replied, "and I wanted to come. I wanted to see what you've been doing. If you'll let me." I looked him in the eyes, searching for ulterior motives, but I only saw genuine curiosity. "It's okay. You can stay." His face lit up with relief. We walked together to my paintings. He observed them in silence for a long time, and then he spoke softly. "This first one, this is how you felt before, right?" I nodded. "And this third one is how you feel now." I nodded again. He pointed to the middle one, the chaotic one. "And this is me. I'm the chaos that interrupted your darkness, but I'm also what pushed you toward the light." His words surprised me with their depth. "I hadn't thought of it that way," I admitted. "But you're right." Nathan turned to me. "Mom, I've thought a lot these past few months. I've worked on myself, and I realized something. You didn't take anything from me. You gave me something I never had. You gave me an example of what it means to stand up for yourself, of what it means to live with dignity. And even though it hurt at the time, now I understand." I felt a lump in my throat. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "I just wanted you to know. And I wanted to give you this." He handed me the flowers. "They're not much, but I picked them myself. Without Jessica's help, without consulting anyone. Just thinking of you." I took the flowers with trembling hands. They were simple, but beautiful. "Thank you," I whispered. Nathan stayed at the exhibition for 2 hours. He talked with Alexandra, with Rose, with other students, and for the first time I saw him genuinely interested in my life, in what I had built. Before he left, he hugged me. It was a different hug. Not the mechanical hug from before. It was a real hug, with feeling. "I'm proud of you, Mom, and I'm sorry it took me so long to tell you." When he left, Alexandra came over. "That's your son. He's changed, or at least he's trying." She smiled. "Sometimes people need to lose something to value it." "Maybe your courage taught him something important." "Maybe," I replied. "Only time will tell. But it's not my responsibility to fix him anymore. That's his own battle, and I have mine. My battle is to keep growing, to keep living. The exhibition ended at sunset. Rose gathered us all and gave a short speech. Each of you came here with your wounds, with your stories, with your fears. But look at what you created. Beauty from pain, strength from vulnerability, and community from loneliness. I am honored to have been a part of your process. We all clapped with tears in our eyes. That night, back in my apartment, I put Nathan's flowers in a vase. I placed them by the window where the morning sun would light them up, and I sat down to think about the entire journey. I had lost the relationship I had with my son, but I had gained something more valuable. I had gained myself. I had reclaimed my voice, my power, my right to exist not just for others, but for me. I didn't know what would happen with Nathan, if he had really changed or if it was just a temporary attempt, but it didn't matter as much anymore, because my happiness no longer depended on him. It no longer depended on anyone but me, and that was liberating. A week later, I received a letter. It was from Jessica. I opened it with curiosity. "Mom," it began, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to reply. I just want you to know that Nathan and I separated. Not because of you, but because we both finally realized we had built a relationship on the wrong foundations. On expectations, on dependence. Now we are both working on ourselves. And maybe one day, if fate allows, we can be better people. Thank you for teaching me that saying no is also an act of love. Self-love." I folded the letter slowly. I didn't feel joy at their separation, but I didn't feel sadness either. I felt neutrality. I felt that everyone was finding their own path, and that was okay. The following months continued at their quiet pace. Nathan called me once a week. Simple conversations, no demands, no manipulations, just genuine questions about my life. And I shared. I told him about my paintings, about Alexandra, about the books I was reading, and he listened. He really listened. I don't know if our relationship would ever be like it was before, but honestly, I didn't want it to be like before. I wanted something new, something healthier, something built on mutual respect, not obligation. 1 year after the confrontation, I was sitting in the same park where I had met that woman feeding the pigeons, and I saw her again, sitting on the same bench. I approached with a smile. "Remember me?" She looked up and her eyes lit up. "The brave woman. Of course I remember you." We sat together. I told her everything that had happened. She listened attentively, and when I finished, she took my hand. "You did more than save yourself. You saved me too. After our conversation, I took your advice. I set boundaries with my children, and you know what? Some got angry, but others understood. And now I have a more honest relationship with them. Thank you." Her words filled me with a deep emotion, because I had made a difference, not just in my life, but in someone else's. That night before sleeping, I wrote in a journal I had started keeping. Today marks 1 year since I made the hardest decision of my life. 1 year since I chose my dignity over the approval of others. And I can say with total honesty that I do not regret it. I learned that love is not constant sacrifice, that family is not blind obligation, that forgiveness is not forgetting, and that old age is not the end. It's just another stage, a stage where I can finally be who I was always meant to be. Now, I don't belong to anyone. I am just me, and that is more than enough. It is everything. I closed the journal, turned off the light, and I fell asleep with a smile, the smile of a free woman.